We are indeed fortunate to have Ma'am here today to share her insights and knowledge with us. I also extend a very warm welcome to the faculty members and students across the state who have joined us in the online mode and those who have joined us here today. It is believed that lighting a lamp brings about peace, prosperity, welfare, and positivity in and around everyone. May I request our eminent speaker, Dr. Sanobar Haider, the Vice Principal, Professor Upma Chaturvedi, IQAC Coordinator, Professor Anjana Krishna, and IQAC Co-Coordinator, Professor Preeti Avasti, to please come forward for the lighting of the lamp.
या कुन्नी तुषारहार धवला या शुभ्रवस्त्रान्विता या वीणा वरदण्डमण्डितकला या श्वेत पद्मासना
Thank you, ma'am. I request I request Professor Upma Chaturvedi, Vice Principal, Awadh Girls Degree College, and Professor Anjana Krishna, IQAC Coordinator, Awadh Girls Degree College, to please welcome Dr. Sanovar Haider with a sapling and a token of our appreciation. Dr. Sanovar Haider has a doctorate in history and topped the UPPSC examination in the year 2010. She is posted at Maharaja Bijli Basi Government PG College, Lucknow, and is currently heading the Department of History. Dr. Haider has had an excellent academic and co-curricular record throughout school and college with a gold medal in LLB in the year 2019. She has been working and contributing in the field of academics for more than 15 years. She has published more than 20 research papers in national and international journals and has authored a total of 5 books, namely Law and Justice in the United Provinces, Siptanabad Through the Lens of Time, which was launched at the Lucknow Literary Festival of 2017, Lucknow Imprints, Chadar Manzil, A Palace by the River, and The Platinum Threshold. Dr. Heather has received multiple awards. To name a few, she won the award for spreading awareness against misconceptions through writing and research by North Indian Journalists Welfare Association 2016. She has also received acknowledgement with the Youth Hostel Gaurav Samman Award for Best Anchoring 2016. Dr. Heather has also been awarded one of the most prestigious awards, that is, the Woman of Excellence Award by Awadhnama on Women's Day 2019. She has organized several national and international seminars and conferences and has been appointed member of the National Archives Grants Committee by the Ministry of Culture, Government of India. Presently, she is working as an active member of the Waqf Imambara Siptanabad, which is a heading the education section, striving for the education of underprivileged children. Now, without further ado, may I request Dr. Sanobar Heather to please come up on stage and enlighten us with pearls of wisdom.
Thank you so much for that kind introduction. Very good morning to all of you. It's always wonderful to be back to college. And before I begin with my presentation, I would like to thank the principal of this college, Professor Beena Rai, the vice principal, Professor Upma Chaturvedi, Dr. Ranjana Krishna, and all the members of the staff present here, especially the students. And I believe through this presentation, you're going to get back some kind of knowledge and information which you are going to connect with your lectures later in class. So, now as you can see, the topic of my presentation, the talk today, is the revolutions, the famous revolutions of the world, with particular reference to the French Revolution of 1789. Now, when we talk about revolts and revolutions, we understand that our textbooks and our history all is filled with references about various kinds of uprisings and revolutions that took place across the world and had far-reaching consequences. When we talk about revolutions, the most famous ones that come to our mind are the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the Chinese Revolution, the Russian Revolution, and the Haitian Revolution. So, one by one, I'm going to tell you something brief about these revolutions because they are contextual. And since we are talking about revolutions across the world, these are the main ones which you are supposed to know. The first one being the American Revolution, which is also popularly known as the first war of the first war of American independence. It happened somewhere 1764-65. And when we analyze these revolutions one by one, you will understand that these revolutions happened to bring about a change. Right? What is a revolution? Revolution, in simple terms, means something that causes a change. So the American Revolution that happened in America was against the British colonial system. America was a colony of the British Empire. Like all over the world, the British Empire had colonies. Like British Empire had the colony in India out of its imperialist policy. Similarly, in America also, North America, I'm talking about 13 colonies of British Empire existed in America, and they were burdened by the oppressive regime of the British. So when the height and the climax reached, the Americans revolted. They raised an alarm, they raised their voices against the British oppression, especially the main cause being the increase in the taxes. So this American Revolution led to the overthrow of the British government in America, and America became independent. So this was a far-reaching consequence of this revolution. The second one is the French Revolution, which I shall be dealing with in detail. It happened in 1789. Again, it was against the monarchical form of government, which had become tyrannical. The third one is the Haitian Revolution. Now, Haiti, have you heard the name of Haiti? It was a colony of France. And again, people of Haiti, they were troubled by the suppressive and the oppressive policies of the French government, the French Empire, and so the self-proclaimed slaves of Haiti, they raised hue and cry, they revolted, and finally they were able to achieve independence from French control. This revolution started in the 1790s, and they were able to get themselves liberated in the year 1804. Next, the Chinese Revolution in 1911 happened against imperialism again. In China, there was more than 2,000-year-old imperial government. The revolution that took place shook the very roots of the imperial regime and got rid of the Qing dynasty, which had been ruling for the last 276 years. Then we come to the Russian Revolution, which is a major revolution of the world in 1917. Again, this happened against the monarchical system. Tsar was the name given to the kings of Russia. People were unhappy with the Tsar, unhappy with the king, so they revolted and again overthrew the government. So, what we understand out of this brief analysis is that all these revolutions of the world happened against the oppression and the tyranny of the government under which they were. These revolutions shook the roots of the government, and we also come to understand that the people, if they organize a mass movement, if they decide to get rid of all kind of tyranny, they can do so, and this movement is known as a revolution. Next slide. Now, can anybody from the audience tell me what is the difference revolution and a revolt? You have heard both the names, but there is a little difference between what a revolution is and what a revolt is. Any idea? All right, I'll tell you. Revolution, Thomas Jefferson, have you heard the name of Thomas Jefferson from the United States of America? He once said that revolutions happen in centuries, which also leads to the loss of lives, but they are good to bring about changes in the system that exists. Revolts happen suddenly, anytime, and they are most of the time unplanned. So revolutions last for a longer period of time, they are more planned and organized, and they have far-reaching consequences. Revolts are sudden, unplanned, most of the time unorganized, but they also have far-reaching consequences. Example is the revolt of 1857, everybody must be knowing about. Was the first war of Indian independence. The Indigo Revolt, the Sannyasi Revolt, and so many revolts that happened in India. So coming back to the topic of the French Revolution, next slide. Now this is a picture of the French flag, and this gives you an idea of the revolution that took place in the year 1789. Next slide, please. Now we'll talk specifically about France. France is a very important country of the European continent, and the time about which we are discussing, that is 1700s, 1789, and after that, during this period and before, the Bourbon dynasty ruled France. And you must be aware that empires were ruled by dynasties, and some dynasties ruled for hundreds of years. So Bourbon dynasty of France started in 1589 and ruled till the French Revolution of 1789. Initially, the Bourbon rulers, they reigned as imperialist monarchs, but after the revolution of 1789, they became constitutional monarchs. I will explain this to you as the lecture progresses. Now, the most important and highlighted kings of the Bourbon dynasty were the series of Louis kings. Now, Louis the 14th, Louis the 15th, Louis the 16th, these are the important rulers whom we are going to refer to during the revolution of 1789. Louis the 14th was the climax of the Bourbon dynasty. He was known as the Sun King, and it was his rule when France, reigned the continent of Europe as one of the leading powers, and it also became the language of European elite, talking about French culture, talking about French fashion, talking about France as a progressive country. All this happened under the reign of Louis the 14th. Then came Louis the 15th and finally Louis the 16th. This was the reign when France started its debacle and the downfall of the Bourbon dynasty began. And there were various causes behind it. Next, please. Now, causes of the French Revolution. Whenever a revolution or a revolt happens, there are some causes, and there sometimes happens to be one immediate cause which sparks off and ignites the fire. So, talking about the causes, first and most important cause is that France was constantly involved in useless warfare. France supported the American War of Independence because France wanted to stand by America against the British Empire. They supported and they showed solidarity with America to exhibit their power to Great Britain. So, whenever a country is involved in a war or it is involved in a rebellion or a civil outbreak, there is a loss of life and property, and thousands and millions of rupees are lost. So, this burden fell upon the French government. Unnecessary involvement of France in the American war burdened the French government with a lot of financial expenditure. And France at that time was in a state of financial crisis. The economy was suffering, and the reason behind the suffering of the economy was the extravagant lifestyle of the king and the queen. King was Louis XVI, and his wife, the queen, was Marie Antoinette. And both these people, the couple was fond of spending money, leading a very lavish lifestyle, indulging in extravagances and luxuries. So these are the two primary causes. First is the American war, and second is the extravagance of the royalty. Next, please. Now, this picture is very important. What can you see in this picture? There are three types of people, and the old man is appearing to be bearing the burden of the other two. Yes? So, this picture depicts the society that existed during the reign of Louis XVI primarily, but it had been existing for quite some time. The society in France was divided into three estates, the three categories. The classes, if I may term it in a very simple manner, society in France was divided into three classes: the first estate, the second estate, and the third estate. The first estate is the man in red. He belonged to the clergy, the religious group of people. The second is the nobility, that is most of the respectability of the European society, the rich people. The third and the old man was the rest of the people. The rest of the population of France formed a part of the third estate. Next. Now, if you can read it, but I'll explain it to you. The time that we are talking about before the revolution, the population of France was somewhere around 24 million, right? And the society was divided into three classes: the first, second, and the third estate. Now, the first estate was the lowest number. They were around 1 lakh. That means the clergy. Clergy, you understood? The religious group. Those people who worked for the church and belonged to the highest order of the society. The second was the nobility. Nobility means who belonged to the royal family and to the noble families of France. They also constituted a very small percentage of the French population. And the third one was the rest of it, like 98% of the French population was belonging to the third estate. And who were they? They were like you and I. They were the common people of France. They were teachers, they were lawyers, they were doctors, they were the common men, there were peasants, there were farmers, artisans, all formed a member of the third estate. 98% of the population, third estate, maximum tax on them, minimum tax on the clergy and the nobility. So the burden of taxes was being borne by the common people who were not given any privileges, who were not given any kind of powers. The maximum powers and privileges and all goodness was rested with the first two classes. So who was being exploited? The third estate. The third estate was burdened with taxation, which was increased every time France was in trouble. The taxes were increased. Why were the taxes increased? Because they needed money for war, they needed money for the fashions of the royal family, they needed money for the maintenance of the royal household, and on top of it, Louis the 16th went into the renovation and the building of the new palace of Versailles. Next, please. Have a look at this picture. The third estate consisting of the rest of the population who were unhappy with the government, and they had all the reason to be unhappy and disgruntled with the present regime. So the monarchy that existed, the king and the queen, they were hated by the people, they were disliked by the people who were the members of the third estate. This is a picture of Louis the 16th. Now, Louis XVI was known for his extravagances, his indulgences, and the building. Told you about the Palace of Versailles. Can we have a look at the picture of the Palace of Versailles, please? See, this is something I try to bring for you. This must have been a luxurious palace. It had a hall of mirrors. It was a dream that was built by the French monarchy. Now, this is a picture of Marie Antoinette, who was the queen and the wife of Louis XVI. Marie Antoinette was a princess of Austria and she was married to Louis when she was 14 years old, right? So she was a young girl. Louis also was a very young boy when he sat on the throne of France. So they were teenagers. You can imagine the mind of the teenager and how it works, holding on to the reins of such a vast empire, what kind of trouble they could have inflicted upon themselves as well as on the empire. So this lady, she was known popularly by the people as a woman of excesses. She was also called the Queen Deficit. Why Queen Deficit? Because the French economy was always in deficit, and the taxes were constantly increased to pay for her fashion sense. Queen Mary Antoinette was very fond of couture and she used to get around 300 gowns made every year from designers. She was fond of jewelry. She was very fond of spending money on herself. And it so happened, this is a popular phrase, when there was a famine, there was a kind of dry spell in France, and there was nothing available for the people to eat. Bread was the basic item that was consumed by the people in France. Even today, you must be knowing that French bread is very common and very popular. So, bread was the main item, the staple item that was eaten by the people of France. And because of the lack of money, because of the lack of funds, bread became expensive. So, when this problem was reported to the queen, she said, let them have cake. So this was taken as an adverse comment by the people, and the hatred for her increased many more. When they can't eat bread, how are they going to eat cake? So whether this phrase is true or not, the historians do not support that she ever said it. And according to some historians, she was a kind-hearted lady. But popular opinion was that she did not care, and the king also did not care about the welfare of the people because of age of enlightenment. Enlightenment, you understand? Enlightenment is a kind of scholarly development. It is a kind of, at that time, it was also a political movement. When people started developing a spirit of inquiry, they wanted to know why things are happening, how things are happening, and they propagated the access to equality among all sections of the society. The French society was existing on the ideals of inequality. The first, second, third estate are quite depictive of the fact that some classes of the society had privileges, other classes of the society were denied of privileges and even of basic amenities of life. So the enlightened scholars, you must have definitely heard the names of Rousseau, Locke, Montesquieu. In political science, these are very important thinkers and philosophers. So they propagated equality of all men. Montesquieu talked about the division of powers, that the executive, legislature, and judiciary should be separated. That idea of political science, separation of the three wings of the government, is inspired by the ideology of Montesquieu. Similarly, Locke and Rousseau also talked about the right to vote, rights of the people, equality, and separation of power. So these kind of ideas were being floated in the French society in the face of the monarchy that was existing. So monarchical form of government does not at all agree with these ideas. But enlightenment was happening and intellectuals were discussing, they were having meetings. So you can say a parallel thought ideology was functioning in the face of the monarchy. Monetary crisis I've already discussed. They were involved in the American War. Then, besides that, they also got involved in the 7 Years' War, in which the French government was defeated. It lowered the prestige of the government and it also harmed the French finances to a great extent. Inadequate leadership of Louis XV, followed by Louis XVI, to address the problems and the troubles of the French society, added to the cause of the French Revolution. Now, this is a picture of how the enlightened intellectuals used to meet and how they used to discuss the problems. And most of the members of the enlightened group were the people from the third estate. Third estate, please remember, the third estate was in trouble and the third estate needed the problems to be addressed. The first and the second estate were very happy. So they used to have these kind of meetings. It was kind of a political organization, and most of the people who belong to this category, they were members of the Jacobin Club. Jacobin Club was a political organization which presented the problems with the government and also worked out its own policies which they were planning to present before the existing government. Now, this is a very important figure of the French Revolution, Maximilien Robespierre. He was a member of the Jacobin Club, he was a lawyer, he was a statesman, and he was an intellectual. What he did, he kind of provided leadership to the French Revolution, and he is going to be a mastermind behind everything that happens in the near future as far as the French Revolution is concerned. This is a picture of the Jacobin Club, how they used to function, how they used to have meetings, they used to have intellectual discussions, and they used to plan against the monarchy. Next, please. Okay, now we come to the French Revolution. Now we are talking about the third estate. The third estate and the rest of the categories used to have discussions with the government about the future policies. Now there happened a case when the third estate was denied certain accesses. The main idea behind the outbreak of the revolution was the concept of voting. Now, what happened? The voting that was done for elections and for the election to the National Assembly, which was a kind of parliament in France, the voting was done on the basis of status, not heads. What the third estate wanted is that we should be allowed to vote on the basis of heads, not status. Right? This sounds quite reasonable. This was not allowed to the people. Finally, they met. The third estate, the leading members of the third estate, they were becoming agitated. It had been years and years of suffering. There are also, unfortunately, at the same time, happened a very dry spell in France, and the people were subject to more of miseries and trouble. So the people and the members of the third estate, they met at a place. They met at a tennis court. You know what a normal tennis court. They met at a tennis court because they were not allowed entry into the National Assembly premises. They met there and they promised and vowed to take up arms against the government and to settle the things right. So this is known as the tennis court oath, which is a very important event at the beginning of the French Revolution. The revolution started on the 14th of July 1789 with the storming of the fort of Bastille. Now, what is the fort of Bastille? Can I have the next picture? See, this is a picture of the fort. This building or this fort was a symbol of royal power. This was the prison in which prisoners were kept. This was the armory where weapons, gunpowder, everything was available. And most importantly, to the people and to the masses, it symbolized the rule of the monarchs. And they hated it. So, what did they do? They climbed over the Bastille and they brought it down. This is known as the storming of the Bastille. They damaged this fort to a great extent, and this happened to be the turning point in the state of affairs, and that is why 14th of July is celebrated as the Bastille Day, and it is a national holiday in France. This is the official beginning of the French Revolution. Next. Now, along with the storming of the Bastille, now when the storming of the fort happened, the revolution gained momentum and now it was in its full swing. Even the women of France, they marched against the palace of Versailles. They wanted to talk to the king and the queen and they wanted the grievances to be redressed. However, the guards at the palace, they denied entry to these women. They were unable to stop them, and these women stormed inside the palace. Now, you can understand the condition, how the French Revolution had spread like wildfire. The state was alarming, and there was going to be doom and trouble for the family and the royal household. These women enter inside, and this is very important. The event is very important because it symbolizes the shifting of power from the royal household to the common man and a common woman. So, very important event. It is a watershed event in the history of the world, the French Revolution, with far reaching results and consequences. Now, this is another very important picture. see what happened. Now the power was indirectly in the hands of the common people who were headed by the bourgeois. Yes, the bourgeois, they were the rich people who belonged to the third estate. The third estate were the common people. Amongst the common people category, there were some people who were richer than the rest of them, and they were known as the bourgeois. Bourgeois were the leaders. They provided leadership and they provided directions to the rest of the community of the third estate how to lead the revolt and how to go about it. Now, these people were dictating terms at the National Assembly. I told you National Assembly was a kind of parliament which worked as the government. The king is there, the queen is there, but they try to escape. They are not in a position to provide governance. So they are captured in a way and they are sent to Paris from Versailles. They are sent to Paris and put under house arrest. Now, here the National Assembly is working under leaders like Maximilian Robespierre, I mentioned in the beginning. Maximilian Robespierre was an intellectual, and now he was one of the leaders of the revolution. The guillotine, this machine, is an invention which can be attributed to the French Revolution. Now, what was this? This machine, this invention was done to punish the traitors of France. Who were termed as traitors? All those who did not side with the revolutionaries. All those who did not take up the cause of the revolution were termed as traitors. So they were put to the guillotine. How did the guillotine work? See, this is how the head was put under the guillotine and it was pulled down and the head was done away with. You have heard the term capital punishment. Capital punishment refers to the removal of the head. It comes from the word capitos. Capitos means head, and punishment of the head means getting rid of the head. So it was a very cruel form of punishment, but it was invented or it was used during the French Revolution, and ultimately it led to the unleashing of the reign of terror because indiscriminately people were made victim of the guillotine. So I was talking to you about the king and the queen, what happened to them. They were sent to Paris. From Paris, the king and his family tried to make an escape. In the beginning, I told you that the queen was from Austria. She was the princess of Austria. So they planned to escape to Austria because they knew that something bad is going to happen to them and they were having 4 children whom they wanted to save. So, dressed in the attire of common people and in a very common kind of a carriage, the king and the queen and the entire family tries to escape. They move out of Paris in the early hours and they were able to reach to the town of Vernice, which was near Austria but still a little bit away from Austria. But unfortunately or fortunately for the revolution, they were captured and they were brought back. Now, a case was done. A case was, you can say trials were done against the royal family, and the king was held responsible. He was accused to be a traitor. How? How was he accused of being a traitor? He had betrayed the faith of the people. He had tried to escape in face of the revolution. Instead of addressing the problems and the grievances of his people and taking care of the welfare of his people, he tried to escape and therefore he was arrested, he was captured and put to the guillotine. Just imagine the fate of the family which had been ruling since 1589. The last king is done away with in a very cruel fashion. So this is how they get rid. The National Assembly tries the charges, and Louis the 16th is held responsible for betraying and for being a traitor, and he is killed. This is something I noted for you that Louis the 16th was assassinated or he was punished on the same pedestal where once his grandfather's statue used to stand. So this is how the dynasties rise and dynasties fall. There is nothing permanent. It tells you about time changes for everyone. In whose destiny the time will change, that only time can decide. But there is nothing that is permanent. Even dynasties which were big and powerful, they are to end and there is a downfall for everything. Next. Now, how can the queen be saved also? The queen was also captured after a few days And the woman who used to dress up in the highest of fashions, she was brought out till that place where the punishment was to be executed in an open carriage. The royal family never moved in an open carriage. They used to have covered carriages, but she was not taken in even in a carriage. It was a vehicle, an open vehicle. So from the place of arrest to the place of execution, she was taken in a maid's dress, open in the vehicle. And you can imagine, when the people hate, they hurl abuses all throughout. On the way, she was hurled with abuses. Maybe she must have been pelted with stones also, till she reached the guillotine. And her destiny also led to the capital punishment of being killed with this machine, which was a machine of blood. All right, what we get to learn from the French Revolution now. Coming, the monarchy is ended. This family has rather ended. The family of Louis the 16 and Marie Antoinette, they have been able to get rid of the two of them, the most hated couple of the empire. What we learn from the French Revolution is that if people they have an ambition, if they have a dedicated cause and they work in an organized manner, they can definitely achieve. So the achievement of the French Revolution was getting rid of the tyrannical rule of the Bourbon dynasty and achieving the objects of liberty, equality. Main cause and the main demand of the French Revolution was equality. They wanted equality for all. Nobody should be high, nobody should be low, everybody should be treated on an equal pedestal. But unfortunately, in societies all over the world, across the continents, we have had instances of inequality of the higher classes and the lower classes. So the ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity were achieved. But what happens later is the reign of terror, which I referred to. The French Revolution, on the way, somewhere lost the cause because they were traitors, and the traitors were judged upon by the National Assembly. The leaders of the National Assembly, they became tyrants in a way, and even Maximilian Robespierre, who was the leader of the revolution, was ultimately put to the guillotine. So there are lessons to be learned from the French Revolution. There is something very important achieved through the French Revolution also. Napoleon Bonaparte, he is regarded as a child of the French Revolution. He became the leader of France. And when you will study about the history of France further, you will understand that Napoleon, leading the French Revolution from inside, becoming the leader of the French Republic, ultimately becomes the emperor of France. So the cause is lost. They are fighting against empire and the monarchical form, and Napoleon himself becomes a monarch after some time. But the French Revolution has significance to a great extent. Next, please. Yeah, equality among all citizens, I have already told you about that. The constitutions of the world, the law-making structures of the world have been very strongly affected by the French Revolution. When we talk about the Constitution of India, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who was the chairman of the drafting committee, he also has adopted the ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity. Where do we find it in the Constitution? Have you read the Constitution, all of you? Next, please. Where do you find the words liberty, equality, fraternity mentioned? Preamble. So, where does it come from? It comes from the ideals of the French Revolution. What is equality? Equality means equal rights for all, whether it is of any gender or of any community, any region. Then, what is liberty? Freedom of all kinds, to the extent it does not harm anyone or abjure the peace of any place. Fraternity comes with more moral bindings, brotherhood and harmony and all that, all those kind of qualities. So this has been adopted by the Indian Constitution and also by many governments across the world. You will find these ideals mentioned in some laws of Denmark and other countries across the world. See, results, what happened? What were the results of the French Revolution? Feudalism was abolished, monarchy came to an end, constitutional monarchy came into existence. What is the meaning of constitutional monarchy? Through the constitution. A constitution was made by France, Declaration of the Rights of Citizen and Man. This is the name of that constitution. and the ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity that we have already discussed. Next, please. Now, with this, I draw towards the end of my presentation. And since history always works with literature, so a deal of effect happened on English literature also of that time, of the French literature also. If you see the works of Wordsworth and Shelley that were written around the French Revolution, focus shifted from nature to man. It became a little more empathetic, and these were the effects of the French Revolution. Romanticism was the idea of poetry and literature of that era, but the French Revolution did have effect on literature, history, and all aspects of academics in a narrower sense, if I say, and on the politics of the entire world. So the French Revolution definitely can be regarded as one of the most important events of world history, and we have a lot to learn from it. Thank you so much.
Any questions? Literature students? Yes. Please go ahead. Good morning, ma'am. My name is Sakshi. I'm 7th student. Ma'am, according to you, was French Revolution was a success or a failure?
Of course, that's a good question. The French Revolution, I told you, consequences. It means that it was a success because it led to the abolition of the monarchy and the establishment of a more representational form of government, a republican and a democratic government, and a constitutional monarchy. Constitutional monarchy, the monarch is more or less a symbol of the government. He is a symbolic head, and the power rests with the people. Right? Like in England, you have a constitutional monarchy. The monarch is a symbolic head, but the parliament carries on the policies. Right? So it was a success, of course. And liberty, equality, fraternity was achieved. Equality was the main reason, the main cause. Of course, it was achieved. The third estate and all the estate system was done away with.
Anyone else?
Good morning, ma'am. My name is Vanchika Bharwat from BA third year. My question is, according to you, is the violence inflicted during the French Revolution
What?
justified?
No, not at all. I told you during the course of my lecture that's where the French Revolution lost its cause. The reign of terror was there. Reign of terror was when a lot of bloodshed happened. So what I was talking about is that we began with a movement. The beginning was violent. I never said that it was a non-violent movement. It was a violent movement, and here I would like to quote Thomas Jefferson again. Thomas Jefferson said, "In a century or two, when few lives are lost for a change, there is nothing like it's not a catastrophe. And when in a revolt, this happens occasionally, which is good for the government. So revolutions happen like this: lives are lost or martyrs do happen. So under any circumstances, violence is not justified, but it was a part and parcel of the entire revolution."
Thank you, Dr. Hajar. Thank
Thank
you
you,
for
ma'am.
this very informative and insightful lecture. And what a wonderful treat, a visual treat. Thank you for this very interesting, picturesque, and colorful presentation to which you have led deliver your talk. Dr. Hajar's name needs no introduction. In our circles, she's been an alumna, a brilliant scholar, and a prolific writer. She has been working for last 2 years for the restoration and for the preservation of historical sites of Lucknow. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Our heart actually fills with great pride when we see our students doing good work and substantial work. And IQSC had started its journey some 10 years back with a plethora of activities, including distinguished lecture series, workshops, student seminar, meet the author, and various competitive activities to explore and maximize the potential of the students and to recognize their talents and to reward them. In this journey, this is the 10th edition, and this year we've gone a step forward. Keeping in mind the spirit of NEP, we we decided to go online for a wider outreach. And I'm happy to share with you all that we had more than 25 colleges and universities who have joined us online. Just to mention a few, NEHU, Shantiniketan, there are colleges from Maharashtra and Karnataka. There are scholars from Kashmir University. And closer home, there are many colleges from UP who joined us and from, of course, across the city. So it has been a very, very fulfilling indeed. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was great talking to the students and being a part of this wonderful program, and wishing you all a very happy Students' Week. I must say, we are on the eve of that World Students' Day. Thank you so much, everyone, for being patient listeners.
On behalf of the faculty members and students of our Girls Degree College, I express my deep sense of gratitude to Dr. Sanoba Heather, the esteemed guest speaker for today. We are grateful for the wealth of knowledge and insights she has shared with us today. It has been a captivating and thought provoking session that has left us with a deeper understanding and appreciation of the past. I am grateful to Professor Beena Rai, Principal, our Girls Degree College, and to the members of the faculty for their utmost support and meticulous planning. I would like to express my deepest appreciation to the students of Maharaja Bijli Pasi Government PG College and to all the participating colleges who have joined the session through online means. We are honored to have hosted such a remarkable gathering. A big thank you to the Students' Council, especially the Photography Club, Entertainment Club, Music Club, and Fine Arts Club for the generous support they have provided for organizing the event. Furthermore, I thank student body for patiently listening to the esteemed guests. I would also like to acknowledge the efforts of the support staff, especially Mr. Raj Bahadur, for ensuring the flawless conduct of today's event. I would like to conclude and reiterate our sincere gratitude to everyone in making the lecture a resounding success. Thank you.
I now request the faculty members and the members of the Student Council to please come forward for a group photograph. May I request the student body to please be seated and please be patient. Thank you.